what's up folks, David here again. Welcome back for part 2 of the Complete Beginner's Guide to Mandolin series here on the channel. And in our first lesson there, we got you holding the mandolin right, we got our left hand, our right hand in action, we tuned up, and we started playing some melodies for this great song called Moonshiner. And in this lesson, I'm going to show you how to play the chords for that exact same song. We're going to learn our first 3 chords on the mandolin and get you started with some simple strum patterns to play along. And the mandolin's really great because you get to play melody and chords, and it's really important to be able to do both in order to play music with other people. If you've never played chords before, basically it's a way of accompanying a melody to flesh out the sound. And what they look like on the mandolin is basically just stationary shapes that we can use with our left hand to allow the pick to follow through all 4 sets of strings at once to get a really nice full sound like this. So for these chords, we have to hold down more than one note on the strings, but the nice thing about the chord shapes we're going to learn here is that we only have to use 2 fingers. We're only going to use our index and our middle finger for these chords we're going to look at today. And for these chords, it's really important to bend all the joints in these 2 fingers. That way you're coming down on the strings with just the very tips of your fingers instead of the fleshy pad, which might cause some muting or some buzzing later on. And this is going to be your very first chord on the mandolin. This is what we call a G major chord. Check it out. We have the open G string, we have the open D string, and then I'm using my index finger on the 2nd fret of the A string, and then my middle finger on the 3rd fret of the E string. So try playing through this G chord one note at a time like this to make sure that there isn't any buzzing or any muting happening, especially on the A and the E strings as you hold down those notes with your left hand. And then, when you're ready, give a strum across all 4 sets of strings to see what it sounds like. Not too bad, right? But to play a song, we have to know a few different chords. So let's check out our next chord, which is C major. This chord is really similar to that G chord that we started out with, right? Remember, your G is open, open, 2, 3. And now, to make this C shape, all we're doing is we're keeping our fingers here on the same frets, but we're moving to a lower string now. So now we have open G, 2nd fret on the D string, 3rd fret on the A string, and your open E string as well. All right, and I'll show you one more here. Here we have our D chord. Here we have the 2nd fret on our G string, open D, open A, and then the 2nd fret on our E string. And these 3 chords might seem pretty simple, but it can be tricky when you're first getting started, especially as you start building up finger calluses on your left hand here. I don't know if you can see it, but my fingers are permanently indented with string marks just because my fingers are so calloused I can't even feel my fingertips anymore. And that'll happen for you eventually too, but your fingers might be a little bit sore and tender starting out here as you start building up those calluses. And it might be harder to maintain the pressure on the strings that you need to sustain these chords like we want to. So just think about that, just get familiar with these shapes, and all that will come in time. All right, so you got these chords separately, but one of the hard parts is transitioning from one chord to the next in time with the progression of the song, right? So let's just get used to the transition from one chord to the next before trying this out over a real tune. So let's practice transitioning from your G to your C chord like this. First up, we'll play our G chord, then lift your fingers up and place them down for your C chord. Give another strum there. And you want to get to a level of familiarity with these chords where you can lift your fingers off simultaneously and put them back down in a new chord shape all in one motion. And a great way to practice that fluid motion is to not even use your right hand at all, but practice moving from one shape to the next with just your left hand. So you can start with your G shape here, lift up your fingers, put them back down in your C shape, and then back up, back to G, back to C. All right, so you got this G to C transition down, no problem. Let's try C to D and see what that feels like. So we'll start off with our C chord here, and then we'll lift our fingers up and make our new D chord here. Again, let's practice just the left hand going from C to D, C to D. One fluid motion. All right, and here's the last transition. What about from D to G? Let's see what that feels like. So we'll start off with our D chord here. We'll lift our fingers up and go to our G chord now. So here's that left hand transition as well. So we're going from D to G, back to D, back to G, back and forth. And one thing to keep in mind here as you play through these chords is to keep our left hand technique consistent. Like we talked about in the first video, we don't want to bend our wrist out or bend our wrist in like this. We want to keep it pretty straight and relaxed. And the same is true when we're playing chords here. So keep an eye on your left hand as you play through these chords and work on these transitions. And when you're ready, let's see if we can apply a strum pattern to learn how to play these chords over a song. All right, check this out. Here's our very first strum pattern that we're going to learn together. It's pretty simple and it goes something like this. We have down, down, up, down, down. So think about this pattern with me, right? Here we have long, short, short, long, long. Or down, down, up, down, down. This pattern just gets repeated again and again and again. So you can link this together like this. So this is the strum pattern we're going to use to play that Moonshiner song we looked at last time, and to learn the chords for this song, we're going to come over to the transcription here on screen. By the way, if you want your own PDF copy of this transcription, as well as all those chord diagrams we looked at earlier, you can find it in the companion ebook for this lesson series over on my Patreon page. The book's available for all Patreon tiers, so check it out if you haven't already. All right, so if you've got that book, and if you've never seen a chart like this before, let me just break down a couple parts for you. Check out this 4/4 time signature that we have over here. This is basically just letting us know that there's 4 beats in the measure. And if you've never seen a measure before, that's what these bar lines are for. Each of these little blocks has 4 beats of time. And the beat of the music is basically the rate at which the notes happen, right? You can feel a beat faster, you can feel a beat slower. It's just the rate of change of how the notes are played. And I think about it kind of like a heart rate, right? Your pulse is determining how the rest of your body feels. And the same is true with the music. You know, the beat of the music dictates the way that the music feels. And if you're new to all this, I know this can sound kind of confusing, but here's the helpful thing is that this strum pattern that we learned earlier fits perfectly within one measure, within 4 beats. Check this out. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So all those down strums that we're doing fit with the beats in the measure, right? And as we come over to the chord chart here, this is going to be really helpful because it's going to let us know how long to stay on each chord before moving on to the next one. So check it out here on the first line, we have 1 measure of G followed by 2 measures of C and then another 2 measures of G. So basically we're going to use this strum pattern once for that very first G chord. Then we're going to use this strum pattern twice for our C chord. Then we're going to use it twice for our G chord. All right, so let's play through that all again, but let's make sure that we don't stop from one chord to the next. We have to maintain this steady heart rate through that entire line of music. And this gets challenging because now we have to shift from one chord to the next without dropping a beat or without slowing down. But let's try it out anyways. So here we have G to a C, another measure of C, back to G. All right, on the next line here, check this out. We have 1 measure of D, so we're going to use that strum pattern once for our D chord. Now we have 2 measures of G, so we'll do the strum pattern twice here. And then back to D for another 2 measures, so another 2 strum patterns on your D chord. Cool, let's try all that in time as well. All right, so just like in the melody, this next phrase is exactly the same as the phrase we just played, and the chords are going to stay the same too. So check it out. We just have 1 measure of D, 2 measures of G, and then 2 measures of D again. Let's try that in time. All right, on to our last phrase here, and check out the chords. First up, we have one measure of G, one strum pattern there. Then we have two measures of C, so two strum patterns on C. And then to finish it off, we're doing two strum patterns over the two measures of this D chord as well. Let's try that together in time as well. All right, well, I think you're ready to play through the whole song from start to finish. Let's come back to the top and try this out with the melody and the backing track so that we can hear it all in context. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice, well, you're well on your way to playing chords here on the mandolin. If you want to practice along with these backing tracks even more, you can grab them over on my Patreon page at the link above. And we got lots more in store for this beginner series. Coming up next in part 3, I'll show you how to read mandolin tablature, which is a really useful skill for learning how to read melodies off of a transcription. So check it out on screen. Be sure to like and subscribe here on YouTube. Check out what's going on Patreon, and I'll see you in the next one.